Well, welcome to this episode of Athletic Training Chat. On this episode, it is a very unique one as our guest Chelsea Matthew and I figure out we have more connection than we thought we did in getting into this. But really, it is a powerful episode talking about the impact athletic trainers can have beyond athletics, sports, and activity, and really just with the people that we interact with on a daily basis in some of our settings. So it is a very good episode with a lot of depth there and really highlights some of the things that our profession does. As always, we are powered by Mueller Sports Medicine. Please consider checking them out, whether it's ankle braces, knee braces, anything you need off the shelf, tape, whatnot. Mueller is worth a look. Great products, fair pricing. We truly appreciate everything they do for us and the athletic training profession. So without further ado, please enjoy this episode. Episode of Athletic Training Chat. We are on with Chelsea Matthew, who is an athletic trainer out in California. We were just catching up on what the world looks like for both of us in the world that we currently live in. But we got connected kind of very randomly, I guess. A former student athlete of yours that's a future, hopefully, athletic training student for us or somewhere else. And then I had been meaning to reach out, which I had done a horrible job of doing, but then just happened to see something on Twitter and I was like, I know who that is without actually having never met them. So we wanted to connect up and get this going. We are going to be talking about the athletic trainer's impact and how that can go just beyond athletics. That's kind of our broad topic with a lot of different things that we'll get into here shortly. But with that, I wanted to turn it over to Chelsea to give a little bit more background information on herself, and then we'll get going from there.
Yeah. So my name's Chelsea. I've been certified athletic trainer since 2010. Got my bachelor's degree in athletic training from Northern Michigan University up in the UP of Michigan. And then I did my master's degree at East Stroudsburg University, which is the northeastern corner of Pennsylvania, about an hour north of like Bethlehem, Allentown area. And so while I was there, I was a grad assistant athletic trainer at Lehigh Valley Charter High School for the Arts. So I worked strictly with high school dancers, which was awesome. It was a really cool experience and something I since have never done since. But if I could, I would go back. It's just a great environment. Did my thesis on Irish step dancing, which was kind of a cool little niche. And then after that, for 7 years, I was at a hospital system in southeastern Wisconsin, outreach. So I worked at Union Grove High School for 7 years. That was my primary role. And then we had a whole bunch of different other contracts. So for a while, I was a strength and conditioning coach for UW Parkside softball. For 2 years, I was a physician extender. I did ergonomic evaluations for employees at Northwest Mutual Life Insurance in Milwaukee. I did senior exercise classes. I instructed those. So I did a whole bunch of stuff there. And then now I'm at Pioneer High School in Santa Rosa, California, which is about an hour and a half north of San Francisco. And I am also a co-athletic director there. Brand new in my role this year with that, which is, again, a huge learning curve, but it's awesome. It's another way to kind of get me involved in athletics at the high school level. Now I'm here.
Just out of curiosity, going from the UP in Wisconsin out to California, it just happened to work out that way, or?
Yeah. So, me and my fiance have been going out here. I don't know. He's been going out here since like early 2000 or early 2010s. And we went out here twice, just in this area for vacation, like 2 or 3 years ago. And
Okay.
I fell in love with it. He obviously has loved this area for a long time. And we were both kind of at the I don't know, like not tail end, but we were kind of reaching a point at our previous jobs where it was like we were like growing like horizontally. There was no real like vertical stuff. So it's like, let's try something else. And they both jobs, it was like serendipitous. Like both jobs kind of opened up at the same time and we're like, yep, this is it. We're going. So
Nice.
pretty cool. Yeah.
That works out.
Yeah.
So athletic training, we've had this conversation with a lot of people. We do so many things, and it really, it depends on the setting, but especially in the high school, and I would even argue in college, depending where you're at, we have to have a skill set that crosses everything. But those relationships that get built are, I think, really unique to about any healthcare um, role that I can think of because of our interaction that we get to have day to day with our patients and athletes, however we want to define that. Um, how have you gone about creating a better connection? I don't know if better is the right word, but maybe a deeper connection with athletes um, as it extends beyond, and you still as the you know this kind of got started because you have a group chat that's called "quote unquote" Chelsea's Children. That
Yeah.
is still continued on to this day.
Yeah.
Several years after it got initiated.
Hmm. Yeah. So I use again sports just in general as that bridge or the common denominator into those deeper conversations. So I learned kind of right away, and I'm not even sure where I learned this from or what I observed it from, but I think just like coaching and observing different coaches and coaching techniques. Um, there was a better connection with the athletes if the coach could walk the walk, rather than just like talking the talk and saying you got to do this. But if the coach could actually like say, actually demonstrate what he wanted the athletes, he or she wanted the athletes to do, then there was a better, better connection, better trust, all that. So I incorporated that right away into my practice. Doing the demonstrating the rehab exercises with them or doing it with them. I would get into the weight room in the mornings. We would have like early morning lifts before school started from like 6 to 8, something like that in the morning. And so I'd get in there and I'd see athletes, me working out, them working out, um, designing like functional drills, functional rehab for athletes that are super close to returning to play, from a long-term injury or things like that. That just again bridge that connection, kind of forge that trust, saying, okay, she actually knows what she's talking about. She's passionate and she cares about it. Um, so after getting that, most of these deeper conversations seem to always revolve and center around relationships, right? So either with the athlete themselves, with their teachers, a lot of it has to do with significant others. So boy
Mm.
issues, girl issues, things like that. Parents and familial situations. So as a high school athletic trainer, it's a pretty unique role because and even I think just in general, even for collegiate athletics as well, it's like you're not a coach, you're not a teacher, you're not their parent, you're kind of this like mix of things. So I kind of view myself as like, I don't know, a big sister or an aunt or something like that. um, but you're this adult role in these athletes lives that is kind of a neutral source, but you're also somebody who's going to keep them accountable, keep them honest, but also maybe have a little more of a empathetic view towards things because you see multiple things because you're viewing their coach, you're seeing their teachers, you're seeing how the parent interacts with them, and you kind of get this whole picture, which I love. Like I personally love that.
Mhm.
That's one of the things that I value the most about being an athletic trainer. So
One thing that you had kind of put in uh, that you had created, and this was back in Wisconsin, is the student athlete leadership team.
yeah.
This SALT program, which just reading through what you had said about it sounds really, really interesting. How did you come about that? This is actually kind of timely for some things going on in the NCAA, at least for D3. I don't know about the rest of them, is now that there's going to be some leadership training options for our coaches to work with their student athletes out of season. So, how'd you come up with it? And maybe some of the things that you put into that in kind of
Yeah.
building leaders.
Yeah. So being again, I was at Union Grove for 7 years. So I think like my last 3 years, I think it's going on like four now that they've been around. I wanted to do something. A couple of my coaches had tried to put in try to meet as a group of just athletes in general and talk about, um, I don't know, like just general topics like once a month or something like that about, the importance of being an athlete on, in school, on campus, and the extra responsibility that came with. But it never really took off, and a couple of the coaches like moved on, and there just really wasn't there was a void. And I had good support from my athletic director, and then two of my PE teachers, who are also volleyball coaches. We all kind of came together and we're like, hey, let's create this group. And actually, it was a basketball coach too who helped. So all four of us, four ladies, created it, which is kind of cool. And came up with the acronym Student Athlete Leadership Team, or SALT. And it was just meant to kind of increase athlete support of each other on campus. So getting more athletes to come to each other's games and stuff. So we kind of forced that connection initially where, fall athlete team or fall teams would be paired up with fall teams. So like a cross country would go to girls volleyball game, and
Mhm.
girls tennis would go to boys volleyball or something like that. So not only be a present at the games, but also give them like goodie bags or things like that. So like a Gatorade and some sunflower seeds or something like that.
Sure.
Um, and so obviously everybody's motivated by food. So like that, really helped
Fair.
that. But then we wanted to have representatives from each team. So typically team captains would come to meetings once a month and kind of disseminate information about what we wanted to do, kind of as a group as a whole. It was called Bronco period. So it was a kind of like a study hall kind of thing. So like once a month we would have all the athletes who wanted to, or anybody who wanted to, come into one of our gyms and play like dodgeball or horse or, something like that. But then we also um, organized like community members to come in and speak on mental health or nutrition or other timely or relevant conversation or relevant topics for our athletes. And then we did community stuff as far as like giving back. So we did went to Milwaukee Rescue Mission to help with around Christmas time with sorting gifts and clothes and things. Went to a couple different soup kitchens, shop with a cop in Kenosha. Um, Painting school bathrooms and hallways with inspirational quotes. We also sent some athletes to like leadership conferences. So like Jostens did one, and I know they went to one this year, but I don't remember what it was. But yeah, just to kind of get athletes involved, not only with each other's like lives and their each other's sports, but just give back to the community as well. So
Nice. This
yeah.
is a completely I wanted to want to know question, but I think it'll be useful. When it comes to like leadership resources, do you have any like go tos, books or otherwise? Just always
Yes.
curious what people find and how it, if I already own it or not, is always another curious one.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I that this is one of the topics that I love reading about and researching just in general. So any Brene Brown work, like at all, like
Okay.
she's phenomenal. So any of her books, I personally my favorite three are Dare to Lead, which is her newest one, and then Braving the Wilderness and Daring Greatly. And basically her information. I mean, it's just. Are you familiar with her work a little bit?
Yeah, I haven't read any of her books, but I've heard several podcast interviews with her and really resonated with some things. And then it is still on my list to get her Netflix special I need to
Yes.
watch still.
Yes. Yeah, that's fantastic. And I mean, she talks about vulnerability and shame and like all of these kind of like
Hmm.
heavy, dark topics. but I mean, it's a thread throughout, throughout all of us, where everybody's dealing with these kinds of things. And so any of her work is good. Any work by Simon Sinek.
Yep.
Um, so like he has the What's Your Why and Start with Why. And then I just read a book by the author Daniel Coyle. It was called
Okay.
Culture Code.
Okay.
And so he talks about how why different some teams or some businesses or whatever like work better together than others, and why. Um, and then just, I mean, I love anything that has to do with psychology and sociology too. So just any of those things. Curating your social media to reflect that as well helps. So I've had a
Absolutely.
couple other people, um, mostly marriage and family therapists, just marriage and family therapists, I guess, around the country, who have some good work out there, and so I just follow them as well. So
Awesome. Those are
yeah,
ones that I will now add to the reading list.
perfect.
Kind of going back to the connection with student athletes, especially in the high school level. People ask me, if I would ever go down to high school, and I say I don't know. I might struggle with it. I like the D3 college world because they're technically adults by 18 now, so you can seemingly have a few more real conversations in terms of that. There's a different level of responsibility in their world, so I don't know how I would do with high schoolers, but I commend everybody who works with them. Um, how do you establish connections with that group, especially because it can be a time where rebellion is key, or it is a hard time. I reflect back and I thought my life was a whole lot harder than it probably was.
Yeah.
I see that now, but definitely did not then. I always refer to it affectionately as my typical teenage angst, as I like to um,
Yeah.
refer to it. But how do you go about establishing those connections?
I think, like, to your point, just like how you said too, first just recognizing in general that high school is tough, right? So there's in general, like, you're going through a lot of emotional changes, hormonal changes, a lot of stuff socially, academically. There's just all these challenges that like are all kind of coming on at the same time, right? So and recognizing that there's a lot of pressures that are put on them by parents, by teachers, by themselves, either comparing themselves to other classmates or to stuff on social media now, because that's a whole another thing that you
Hmm.
and I didn't have to deal with when we were in high
Right.
school. Um,
Facebook, when it was still a .edu address.
yes.
I thought it was the dumbest thing ever, which is why I don't invest, because I was wrong.
Yeah, my first social media was MySpace, so that's
Yeah,
what
I
I
had
had,
one of
and then
those.
I
It
went on to
probably still
Facebook
exists
after
somewhere.
high school. Yes,
Yeah,
somewhere I think mine does too. Yeah, couldn't
yeah.
tell you what my username was, but
No.
yeah, no, not at all. Which is fine. Just we'll bury that for a while. It's
Yes.
okay. Yeah, but like, the important thing I think though is that I think there's starting to be a change in the way people talk about social media and talk about comparisons, and like, we're starting to recognize that, yeah, everything that is put out there is not accurate, and it's a highlight reel, instead of like the nitty gritty day to day stuff. And I think a lot of the athletes that I'm talking to now, I think are realizing that now. So it's a little bit easier to kind of break those walls down and stuff. So that's nice. But yeah, just recognizing that in general, that it is tough, right? So that's the first thing. But I have so many different examples of kind of uh, how I bridge that connection or create that connection. So just in general, starting with a friendly athletic training room environment, decorate it the way that you want to decorate it, throw Christmas lights on there, play music, like, if you can do different, different like softer, like uplighting, versus like the kind of wherever you are, if you're in a closet or if you're,
Yeah.
have the harsh fluorescent lights above you, make it your own, and make it reflect the colors of your school or the mascot or whatever it is. I created um, the at Union Grove, our mascot was Broncos, so I created a busted Broncos injury wall. So I had, and again, that's a talking point, right? So, oh,
Hmm.
what does that look like? What does that look like? Who's that from? What is that? Um, And again, obviously, I'm not gonna, I run out onto the, football field and there's a broken leg. I'm not gonna say, "Hey, can I take your picture?"
Right.
Obviously, you know, use that discretion. But that was a huge talking point, and again, kind of creates that connection a little bit more. I stole this idea from another athletic trainer that I found on the secondary school's athletic training Facebook page. His name's Jerome Mogul, but he made a wall like collage of like action shots of all of his athletes, and
Oh, nice.
on the top of it, he cut out letters that said "You Matter," and like the AT was like the AT logo.
Yep.
Um, and so I put, yeah, so I put, we have an awesome photographer at Pioneer High School. Her name is Mindy, and she comes. She just volunteers. She comes and she takes pictures of our athletes during games and stuff. And I asked if I could use some of those photos for that, so I have that in my athletic training room, just the action shot. So again, another talking point, right? Having a quality sign, LGBTQ safe space, thing on your window or on your door, also creates that inclusion environment. And then having a whiteboard on your in your room with inspirational quotes, or just, I call them my connection questions. So I'm going to ask you this, because it's a typical one that I would have. So if what movie or TV series could you watch over and over again without getting tired?
Oh, you're asking me?
I'm asking you.
Ah, crap. There could be quite a few of those. Thoroughly enjoy the TV series Suits.
Suits. Okay. All right. All right. I would, for me, I'd have to say it'd probably have to be The Office.
I've thought about getting into that one. Haven't pulled the trigger yet, but I
Okay.
have a lot of free time right now, so that might
It's
be on my
true.
list
Yes.
instead of
Yes.
rewatching multiple ones.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I've seen like poll questions too. So like if anytime any athlete comes in, they have to answer this question, and it's just like a tally. So you've seen that at
Okay.
like coffee shops or whatever, like the tip jars, like each
Yeah,
either
yeah.
or. So for this one, cake or pie, would you say?
Oh man. As long if cheesecake counts as cake, then I'll say cake.
Okay. Okay. I
Unless
mean,
it
I would
unless
say
that's a
that
pie.
I was gonna say I would say that might be a pie, but only
Well,
because
then
it's in a
then it's
pie
definitely
tin.
pie because 'cause I'll take
Yeah.
pumpkin in that mix too. So
Okay. Okay. I'd have to go with cake.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
fair.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I haven't met many cakes I don't like either, but you know.
Yeah. 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 And then, I mean, other than that, like having a social media presence, again, if your workplace rules allow, at my previous job, because I was employed by a hospital, like we couldn't, there was just really strict rules around
Mhm.
a social media presence. So, but here, it's a little less than that. So I have, Pioneer Sports Med on Twitter and Instagram. And so with that, posting funny memes, athlete shout outs, I did some Instagram stories for like a day in the life kind of thing, back in fall, where, I went through my day on a football game day, like an away game, so
Okay.
what I would have to prep for, and, what my sideline view looked like, and like a tally of, I taped 5 wrists and 3 ankles, and I did an injury eval, and I had to send a kid to, like one kid I had to send to the hospital, so like a tally at the end, and just
Yep.
kind of create that interaction and stuff. So, um, yeah, those are
Nice.
a lot of ideas that you can implement really easy. So,
So this is one, and I don't know that I've seen the debate, on Twitter necessarily, but I could see where some people would come with it just based on some of the conversations I've going is, you know, balancing this role of, connecting with student athletes or patients or however we want to define them, you know, with your quote unquote just job as a medical provider. And I don't know that it's this, but I always go back to like Charles Barkley, who was an NBA basketball player, is like, I don't get paid to be a role model. Like that's not my job. My job is to play basketball. But yet he's so famous that, it was kind of like the responsibility that came along with it. That being said, kind of the question, I guess, is, for the potentially, is this just really kind of part of what we sign up for, especially if you're wanting to work in a high school or a collegiate setting, and just kind of general thoughts on that.
In my opinion, I would say yes. Like, depending on um, the setting that you're in, but especially if you're working with minors or if you're working with young adults, like in the collegiate setting, um, you do have that responsibility. I feel like to be, even if it is just being a professional, just treating them with respect, and treating them with the I'm going to do everything I can kind of thing to um, get you back on, get you back to play, or get you to the, proper referral networks that you need, or whatever that is. I think that's incredibly important. And um, so for me, I don't, it's always in the back of my head. And I feel like it's more enjoyable for me when I have that connection to be able to treat, to see those athletes and treat them, every day, or even just seeing them on campus. And, if I don't create that connection, it's like, I don't show myself as a human, and I don't see them as a human, or that there's that common denominator. And it just makes it so much more enjoyable. So even if it's an unwritten rule of the job, it is what it is. It goes hand in hand. And I feel like the only time that I feel like there needed like a balance or whatever, or if I feel like I needed a little extra support, was with I had 2 or 3 athletes who had a pretty significant mental health crisis, and I was
Hmm.
like their first point of contact. So that, um, thankfully, all of them had favorable outcomes, and they're all fine and everything like that. But um, I had to debrief with a trusted, either a mentor or another coach or something like that, who was involved with that incident. Um, and that's another reason why I got involved with AT's care as well. I did the group training 2 years ago at GLADA. So now
Okay.
I'm part of that team now, or that network. Um, just because I've been through it before, and so I get the need for it as well. So yeah.
One other, and so kind of totally switching gears now, but one that you kind of mentioned as an area of interest, we were fortunate enough to start working with a former alum for us who's doing his PhD at Missouri, I believe, about post injury and what that means to the athlete, and he was working on developing kind of a guidebook of the different kind of phases of it, and we were helping him gather some input from athletes that got hurt on the acute end. But what role have you taken or found, and also things that you found successful in helping an athlete maintain their identity after an injury?
So first off, I'm going to need to get my hands on that research or whatever. If you can forward that on to me eventually,
I
I'll be able.
will. I've got the first part of it that he shared back to us hidden somewhere. I will dig it up and pass it
Awesome.
along.
Sweet. Yeah, so I first thought about this probably 2 or 3 years ago now, which should have probably happened sooner, but I guess I'm glad it happened regardless, right?
Yep.
Rehabbing 2 different athletes, one for an ACL injury, who's actually in that Chelsea's Children
Okay.
chat now, and then another girl who had a really significant lateral ankle sprain that took her probably 4 or 5 or 6 weeks out of her basketball season. And both are high level athletes, both use their sport as an outlet for like life stressors. And when that was taken away from them, it was just a huge blow, obviously. So just generally, first thing I used, like I talked about a little bit earlier, was using rehab as a way to stay competitive. So either competing with me, or competing with an athlete, competing with themselves, either with like timing or reps or whatever they
Hmm.
could get. Created like these little finishers at the end of rehab for like a little cardio or a little strength training, without the involved body parts. And then if possible, always trying to do rehab within the site of their team. or within the sight of the coach, at least, if not every day, at least, a couple days a week. Because that would, keep not only the athlete in the team mindset a little bit, or at least around the team, but it would let the coach know that, hey, this kid isn't just sitting in my, athletic training room with, in an ice bucket, which is a whole nother story that we could talk about later too. Right.
Fair.
But yeah, so it's just, they're still involved. They're still doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're still an athlete. Right. And then I think combining the connection questions that I, have on my whiteboard or whatever with that competitive atmosphere seemed to help just a little bit, at least initially. But just in general, always holding space for them to, break down, to vent, to be pissed, to whatever they need to do, just to let them speak. Validating their feelings, telling them there's no right or wrong way to feel. And then also just letting them know that, yeah, you're grieving. Like this is a grieving process. You lost something, you lost a slice of your identity. But then also trying to pick out from them, like, what else do you like to do? Like, what else piques your interest? What are your hobbies, or what other things? Like, if you could do anything, what would you do, or what would you look into? And one of the things that I'm trying to do, is come up with an ACL recovery club.
Okay.
So, it's still in like its way early stages and stuff, but one of the years that I was at Union Grove, I had like 4 or 5 different ACL tears in one year, which is just, to me, is kind of crazy. Because again, it comes and goes in cycles and stuff, but this year was busy. And so the more that I was dealing with athletes in just different stages of their recovery process, I was kind of organically starting to like, oh, you should talk to this person because they had a really terrible 2 days post-op, and, this might be a way to kind of connect and kind of talk about that. And I don't know, another thing they could connect with is just, their expectations for surgery, if they're super wound up about it, or what helped them going into surgery, any of the mental blocks they might have had. So if anybody's listening and they've started something like this, like, let me know, because I would love to, to implement some of those ideas. And then another website that really helped me is called sidelinedusa.org. And it's a organization that helps athletes who are either dealing with season ending or career ending injuries. And they have a lot of really good articles about, the psychology of injury and recovery, and like tips and tricks and tools and things that, care providers can use, and parents, and all that stuff. So it's a really, really good resource.
Yeah, I had never heard of that before, but I'm definitely going to check it out. We were fortunate enough to hire a new staff member last year, that just is everything mental health is what she finds fascinating, and whatnot. So I will also share it with her, as she will,
Sweet.
I think, go through that thing, which will be great.
Yeah.
Anything else within this whole context that we didn't cover that you wanted to?
I don't think so. I think that, again, hopefully everybody can hear and see that I love this topic, and I don't know. I love this role as an athletic trainer in general, and it's a huge passion of mine, and it's one of the reasons why I went into this job. And every time that I have a crappy day or a down day, and I have a like my why box, which is another thing that I would encourage athletic trainers, or just even new or old or whatever, to create and collect, is like any sort of news or positive feedback from coaches, from athletes, anything like that. So if you're having a crappy day, like, look back and say, oh yeah, I forgot 2 years ago, like, she really helped me, or I really helped her through this. And, that's just, it's a good resource to have. So
I like that one. With that, onto the AT chat questions.
yes.
So the first one is, where do you see athletic training going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, first off, just because I'm in California, getting licensure finally for this state, it's just so mind-boggling. I practiced in two different states before this one, and we both obviously, California being the only one without licensure. It's just wild to see the um, the differences. I mean, there's small pockets in California that are doing really, really well, like LA area, San Francisco, um, Sonoma County for a little bit where we are. There's again just pockets, but it's not as widespread or as common as like again where I used to be back in southeastern Wisconsin. Every school in our conference had an athletic trainer. Out here, we have 12 schools in our conference. They call it leagues out here. Only 5 have athletic trainers, full-time certified ATs, on site and on staff, and um, that's only in our district. So of all other schools around this area don't have athletic trainers, and not even outreach, nothing. So it's wild to show up to a football game on Friday nights, and we're covering both. We have to take care of both teams, both sides, and if we're at a home or an away game, um, my first time out here, I they had a trainer, air quotes, and he called himself a trainer, and he was there for the JV game, and was at first half of varsity, and then left. He came up to me at halftime and was just like, "Hey, I hope you don't mind. You're going to be the only one here." So it just wild to me. So working, reading up and researching just whatever we can do to again pass this legislation, and it seemed like it had some momentum. We have a new governor out here who has young kids, and kind of hopefully would see the importance of that. But now with the COVID-19 and coronavirus pandemic, not sure where that bill is going to end up. But I don't know. I've always been glass half full. So hopefully, hopefully soon we'll get that. And then hopefully with that, just increased um, athletic trainers at the secondary site would be fantastic.
Absolutely. What is the next one? What advice would you give to yourself if you could go back as a young athletic trainer? If you want to set where that was, whether it's right out of undergrad or in the process of grad school, but if you could go back, what would you tell yourself?
Um, I would tell myself it'd be like first or second year at Union Grove. So 3 maybe 2 years into my practice. Um, don't worry about trying to please everybody with your your decision making,
Mm-hmm.
because you won't, like you will not, and you're going to end up, especially working at the secondary setting, you're going to end up pissing off a parent or a coach or an athlete even, and connecting that with your gut instinct, like trust your gut, and if your gut is telling you, hey, something doesn't feel right, listen to it, because most likely it's true. And even if
Sure.
it's not, like your overarching goal as an athletic trainer is the health and safety and well-being of the athletes or patients that you're taking care of, right? And if you're trying to compromise that because don't want to anger a coach who you have to pull a running back, and in a homecoming game where it's super close, like and this kid ends up getting hurt more, like that's on you, that's not on the coach. So trust your gut.
Makes sense. Good advice. I've definitely put myself through that ringer. Um, yeah, grad school was a big learning curve. Much better from those times. What has been one of the most influential resources that you have come across in your career?
I have two. First is just, again, there's blessings and curses with social media, but um, two Facebook groups, the secondary school athletic trainers group and the women in athletic training group on Facebook have been wonderful. I know that um, you have to take everything that is said on, I don't know, especially with a couple of those groups with a grain of salt. I mean,
Hmm.
obviously you're going to have differing opinions, and, like, you should always wear khakis at, when you're working, and you can't wear jeans, and you can't, like, that stupid whatever. And I think I've
The towel
heard,
debate.
yeah, oh God. And, like, yeah. And, wearing hats and tattoos and piercings and whatever, like, nobody cares. Like, just do your job. Like,
Yep.
and I mean, that, again, my opinion, but, like,
Sure.
you're just get away from that. But anyways, they've had, I work well in a team and, like, bouncing ideas off of each other. So those things have helped tremendously. Um, and then I've had two mentors. Um, I'll shout them out right now: Kevin Turple and Sue Roundtree. Both still back in Wisconsin, but they're both athletic trainers. Sue's also a PT.
Did
But
she go to Madison?
she did.
I That sounded familiar. I graduated with her.
No way! Oh my
Yep.
gosh, I'm gonna have to tell her.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, we
That's
we
so cool.
graduated from Wisconsin in '08.
Okay.
To get
Yeah.
wow. At least we were in the same class. I don't know how our graduations lined up because I know she went on for PT and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
man, that sounds so familiar and
That's
wondered.
so
But as soon as
cool.
you said that, there you go.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. She's like one of my best friends too. But yeah, she works at or still works at Athletico, and she's the clinic manager there, which
Okay.
is just down the street from Union Grove. And we started a kind of a professional relationship, because I was sending a lot of my kids to her because they did awesome work. And
Yep.
she's also has an athletic training background. And but yeah, and then kind of got closer over the years and stuff. And but yeah, and then Kevin was my coworker at the hospital that we worked at. And
Okay.
just I wouldn't be like the clinician that I am today without both of them. And just a lot of the skills, like soft skills, and, like, manual therapy things and everything like that, they've just been huge in my practice. So
Awesome.
yeah.
That's funny. Small world.
Right, I know.
If you could change or eliminate one thing, could be a modality, a common practice, a mindset, or whatever you deem that you want to cover in the field of athletic training, what would it be?
I have two again for that. Uh, First one, just a common practice of, like, glorifying the, like, 60 to 80-hour work weeks, whatever that is, just because that's your job. Um, and not giving yourself enough time to build up the other facets of your life. So, kind of like we talked about earlier with um, athletes just being athletes and not being anything else. We're not just athletic trainers, right? Our jobs don't define us. And I mean, it's a huge aspect of our life, and we will have busy seasons and not busy seasons and things like that. And I'm not saying to, just always work 40 hours a week and that's it. Like, you can't do that as an athletic trainer, but give yourself time to develop those hobbies, to develop the social networks, and the um just the all of that stuff that makes you a better human in general, by giving yourself time to explore those parts means creating boundaries, which also means saying no. And so I think that's really hard for us sometimes. And I know you touched on that, I think, earlier, with, like, one of your earlier podcasts, which is just kind of a small little one, but learning how to say no and learning how to, kind of set your boundaries, not answering a call at 10:30 at night when, have them leave a voicemail and you can call them back, at 8:30 tomorrow morning.
Hmm.
Um, just those little things like that. You'll be in the profession. I feel, my opinion, you'll be in the profession a lot longer if you develop yourself outside of your role as an athletic trainer. Yeah.
Agreed. Very much agreed. Yep.
Yeah. And then the other one is just the modesty mindset of like downplaying yourself and staying in the background and not wanting, not wanting, or not necessarily not wanting any recognition, because most of us always want recognition, right?
Sure.
We're outraged when we don't get the recognition, but like finding that balance, I guess, so advocating for yourself, you don't be modest, but be humble. So modesty, there's a quote from Maya Angelou. So modesty is a learned affectation. You don't want modesty, you want humility. Humility comes from the inside out. And humility implies that you know who you are, you know what you were put on this earth to do. And therefore you're going to do whatever you can to do that, and to recognize yourself when you have your wins or when you put in the good work or whatever. So track your hours, track your athlete contacts, advocate for yourself, back up all of that work. And if you feel like you can't talk about yourself, talk about your other fellow athletic trainers and what
Yep.
they've done. And hopefully that'll be like a cyclical thing. So
I like that one a lot, having that humility and everything. Um, but still making sure people understand what you do.
yeah,
That has been a huge focus that I've had a shift in the last couple of years, and it's been, I think, much for the better and for staff and otherwise. Last question: what does being an athletic trainer mean to you?
to me, it means just being an ally and being a team player. Creating that environment for athletes or patients, whoever you end up interacting with, to feel comfortable sharing pieces of themselves in a place that they don't feel like they have to like wear that mask, to be this tough person, to be the overachiever, to be the, you know, athlete who has all of those stats behind them and, all of that stuff. So, um, it's been incredibly meaningful to create that space, and everybody wants to be seen, everybody wants to be heard and validated, right? That's just, we're wired, like Brene Brown says, we're wired for connection, right? High schoolers are no different, like everybody is like that. And trying to create a sense of normalcy around all of those fears of not fitting in, not being enough, not meeting expectations, just being, showing them that everybody's human, I'm human, your coaches are human, and just creating that space for them. That's what I use, as my platform of an athletic trainer. So
I like it. Anything else in closing?
shout out to my Chelsea's Children group
Yeah.
chat ladies. This wouldn't have happened, I don't feel like, without that connection. So and all of my athletes that I've had in my room throughout the years, all the talks that we've had, I feel like most of them have circled around boy relationships with crushes, with their boyfriends, with girlfriends, whatever that is. Um, all of those frustrations. It's just, you inspire me to continue to be better every day. So I wouldn't be
And
here without
then,
them.
for sure. And then if people wanted to follow you or reach out for anything, if you've got a ACL support group that you've already started,
Yeah.
yeah, where would they best do that? And we'll link all
Um,
these up.
yeah. So I am on Twitter and Instagram, with my Piners at Piner Sports Med. And those are my work, work ones. But then for personal, I'm also on Twitter at Chelsea_ATC, and then on Instagram at Barefoot Chels. But personal, again, if athletes try and follow me, I won't follow you until after you graduate. Sorry, that's just
Yep. That's how I roll with all my stuff too, for the
Yep.
most part.
Yep. So if you want to reach out, if you're one of my athletes and want to reach out, do it under Piner Sports Med. So
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for taking the time.
thank you. Appreciate it.